Hey y'all, Callie here. We wanted to offer a quick disclaimer. This podcast episode was recorded pre-election, so there was definitely conversation related to the political candidates and their campaigns. While it is coming to you later than we had planned, we feel that the content of this episode is still relevant and worthy of discussion. Full disclosure, we also discussed the injection of swear words being more commonplace in the American political landscape. Consider this your language disclaimer. Happy listening.
Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Curl up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing.
We're glad you're here.
Happy listening.
Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom. We're here on a lovely fall day in Texas. I'm Mecca, the mom, and I'm here with my two millennial children, Cole and Callie, and we're going to talk a little bit today about how we see our society. Hey guys, how are y'all?
Hey.
I am hanging in there. Gig, you were talking earlier about not getting a whole lot of sleep. I went to bed way too early last night and only slept for like 2 hours. And then I was supposed to be up at like 6:15 this morning, and I finally fell back asleep about 5:15 and didn't set an alarm. So there was lots of coffee involved. But after I got my caffeine, it's been a pretty good day so far. Really excited to be here and have this discussion with you guys. So, Gig, what was going on with your sleep schedule last night?
So about the time that you were supposed to get up, we were just going to bed. We have had a busy week, and Ryan and I hadn't spent a bunch of time together this week. And for whatever reason, like it was a perfect storm. And so we just sat around our house. We split a bottle of wine. We listened to a bunch of music in the music room, and we laughed over absolutely nothing and everything, and we had a blast.
So, sounds like y'all had a pretty interesting hap to your week.
Yes, we did.
So, what else is going on in the world this week? What have y'all heard?
I have been having kind of a field day, if you will, with all of these random endorsements coming out for our various politicians, especially Trump and Harris. All of these Republicans who are coming out, like die-hard, robust Republicans who are like, we're not voting for Trump. We're definitely voting for Harris for these reasons. I mean, I send mom text messages. I'm like, oh my God, did you see so-and-so came out? This is going to be podcast fodder for weeks. Like, I listened to Meghan McCain's podcast, Citizen McCain, and she's not always my favorite. Sorry, Meghan. I love the podcast, but sorry, Meghan. But her brother came out this week in support of Kamala Harris, and I was like, oh, she's going to be so mad. I can't wait to listen.
I just think that's going to be a really nasty Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the McCains can probably be civil with each other, but what kind of reasons are they having for coming out for someone who in the political landscape is seen as relatively far to the left from what I would assume their political stance would be?
I feel like so many of them are really, truly concerned about the danger that Trump poses in the White House and what that could potentially kind of snowball into. I mean, Dick Cheney just came out this week talking about he's going to be voting for Harris and why. And he was like, there has never, ever been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the election. He keeps inciting violence and all of these things. And he just can't. I think he said something like he can never be trusted with power again. And like, that's a really strong statement, like for anybody to make about anybody. But can you imagine like even like on our scale, who I'm not running for president anytime soon. I don't want that job.
Never.
Mom and I were talking about that. I don't want that job. But like if somebody came at me and said, hey, Callie should never have any kind of power or control again, like that would break my heart. And for it to be somebody who's well respected in the political landscape of the of America, of the United States, I feel like that would just be a pretty hard, tough blow. Like, I'm trying to think who all it has been. Like Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney have come out. The youngest of John McCain's children has come out. Oh, I loved the one who spoke. I saw it on social media, but he's the mayor of Mesa, Arizona, and he came out. What was that for, Mom? We talked about it.
He
I
was
can't
at the
remember.
DNC, wasn't he?
Is that what it was?
I
He
think he
came
was
out
at
and
the
he's like,
DNC.
"Hey, you guys were not expecting to see me here, and I'm sorry. I'm a lifelong Republican. I know, but this is not what is best for our country. And I'm really, really glad to be here. And I'm really excited to vote for Kamala Harris for president for 2024. I was so
Yeah.
impressed with him. He did a nice job.
I just did a quick search for kind of the other side to take a
Yeah.
look at Democrats who have come out to endorse Trump. And it is what appears to be a significantly shorter list. And I knew about two of them. And I have kind of liked these two, and I am a little, I don't know if concerned is the right word, but maybe a little bit more skeptical of these two politicians beforehand. Let me go ahead and disclose this ahead of time. I am not a Trump supporter. I am also not a Kamala Harris supporter. I think that neither one of them are really great options. And I really don't see as one being any better than the other. And so at this point, I think I am more concerned with policy than the actual person. And I am not a huge fan of either of their policies. But the short list here for Democrats that have come out in support of Trump is kind of concerning at this point. So the two that I already knew were Tulsi Gabbard, who has been
Right.
a Democratic representative previously, and I have not spent a tremendous amount of time researching Tulsi, but I have seen her on several other podcasts, and generally I tend to agree with her sentiment, at least. Some of her policies I like a lot. She's very, at this point, anti-interventionalist. She is not hawkish. She doesn't really believe that we should be policing the world or other countries. I think her view is that we have greater concerns at home. The other Democrat who this one doesn't really surprise me, and I think these two are in a similar position here, is RFK Jr. So those two have come out in support of Trump, which to me is a red flag, and it's been a red flag that has been growing for me for the last several campaign cycles, is that these were what I would have considered viable candidates at one point within the Democratic Party, that if you listen to their story and give credence to it, were very much pushed out of utilizing the Democratic Party as a platform, even though they have both been in the party for quite some time. And the gist of their story is that they were not willing to play ball with the party, and so they were not catered to like some other candidates have. But the other two that I'm seeing here on this list, Ruben Diaz Sr., who is a socially conservative Democrat out of New York, has endorsed Trump, but it also shows here that he is staunchly against abortion and same-sex marriage, which is not typical of a Democrat.
Yeah.
Not to say that no Democrats believe that, because I'm sure there are plenty who do, because as everyone probably realizes, and if you didn't, here's a quick note just from me, is that the vast majority of Americans are not left or right. Most of us are much closer to the center. Now, we do have tendencies on different policies to lean a little bit further left or right, but generally speaking, I think most people are closer to the center. But the other one that I see here is a man that I've never heard of before, Rod Blagojevich. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name there, Rod, but this one is a little bit concerning because he's a former Illinois governor who was the governor for 6 years in the early 2000s before he was impeached, removed from office, and then served several years in prison before Trump pardoned him. And so that one is probably not a great person to be endorsing your campaign. It seems a little bit like nepotism to me, but it's really interesting to see, particularly the Cheney family coming out for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, those are big political families that have long histories to come out and not make a switch so much to their party, but a switch to their candidate.
Yeah, and endorsing a Democratic candidate from a Cheney is a little bit mind-boggling. I think if you look a little bit deeper, it's probably not quite as surprising as you would think it would be, because Cheney is historically hawkish, and some people would tell you that the parties have kind of flipped a little bit, where the Democrats used to be the anti-war party, and now they are closer to the hawk side, and Republicans seem to be a little bit less hawkish than they were in the early 2000s. And so maybe it's not quite as surprising as it sounds just kind of off the rip. But that's really, really interesting. And so that kind of leads me into what I want to talk about today. And I want to make a quick disclosure here. I saw a post from a friend of mine as I was doom scrolling last night, and I thought it was really interesting. And so I just kind of want to give a disclosure before we get into a conversation like this. My personal opinion is that voting should not be a popularity contest. You shouldn't be voting for the candidate that you like as a person better. You should be voting for the candidate who has the policies that you agree with and want to see brought to fruition. The problem with that is oftentimes candidates will run on these policies and then not necessarily follow through. And a lot of times they have policies that aren't realistic. Like a lot of things that both Kamala and Kamala and Trump have utilized as policy platforms really aren't viable. They're not good solutions to our problems. Regardless of whether you like the idea or not, the feasibility of those ideas is a completely different issue. And so
Agreed.
I want to talk today kind of about the political landscape and how we see our society as a whole, not just politically, but particularly politically. And before that, with this disclosure that I want to give, nothing that we say here is intended to offend anyone. That's not our goal. It's honestly and truly the opposite of that. We want to have these discussions with each other, especially on the things that we disagree on, so that maybe we can get a better understanding of how each other sees these different policies and how they may work and affect the nation, and why some of them may be good and why some of them may be bad, so that we can come away from this conversation later with a better understanding of why we feel the way that we do, so that maybe we can have these conversations again and move even closer to each other, to understanding each other better, and walk away from it with more love for each other because we have that better understanding, instead of being angry with each other because of how we feel about X, Y, or Z. And so finally, to end my kind of spiel here, the post that I saw last night is one that I want everybody to really take to heart, because I think it's really important to understand that pop psychology is not psychology. Everyone you dislike is not a narcissist. Every unpleasant experience is not trauma. Having needs does not make you codependent. Disagreement is not gaslighting. Conflict is not abuse. Taking offense is not being triggered. Everything does not need to be normalized, and speaking like an HR memo is not self-awareness. And so I think that's a really good outlook to have, that the world is not necessarily out to get you. The world just is, and sometimes it sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so excited. We've got some stuff on the docket to talk about today that I'm just really excited, because I think that the three of us really disagree. And Mom said in a previous episode, like, that she and I were more simpatico, but there's some stuff on the docket today where we disagree and where we do not align. And I think that the moment that we open ourselves up to having conversations with people that we respect and that respect us, with people that we love and that love us, I think gives us a better understanding and a more broad perspective on why they're different and why this is important to them and why this matters to them and why this is something that has motivated them in whatever fashion to whatever end. And so I'm really, really excited to kind of have that conversation and to get into the friction of it all, because I think that that's when we grow. You know, they say the most painful part of a flower is bursting, is getting ready, like right before it blooms. That's when it has to exert as much energy, more energy than any other time, because that change and that growth is hard. It's really painful. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. So then you bloom and then you blossom. And I feel the same way about these conversations. And so I'm excited to get through that pain point of blooming so that we can really blossom and grow and become better and more aware and more well-rounded human beings. I'm so excited.
So I'm just sitting here thinking, Cal, I would call you the optimist. Cole, I would call you a cynic. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle there, not either consistently. So I think that we should have some pretty good perspectives here, variety.
Oh, yeah. And I think that, at least for me, that's one of my favorite parts about my conversations with the two of you and why I'm so excited about this podcast, to have an excuse to have these conversations. We're already having them anyway, but this has just been that much more of a motivator for us to think through our beliefs and talk through what it is that brought us to this specific place with this idea or thought or ideology. And I think that you're right. I do think that sometimes you're more in the middle. I'm definitely the optimist, and that's one of my favorite things about me. Like, I love to be happy and I love love. And we watched like a Hallmark rom-com the other day that Ryan put on, for the record, which was very, very out of character. And I was like, you know what? That movie wasn't great, and I loved every second of it. Because I like goodness and I like joy and I like happiness. And I think that these conversations allow me to better understand you guys and better understand perspectives outside of my own. And I'm just super pumped about it.
So, give us your 10,000 foot view of our world today.
Yeah. How do you kind of view our society as a whole, both the good and the bad? And if you could immediately change something about our society, maybe one aspect or even two or three, what would those things be that you would change?
Burn it down. Burn it all down and start over.
No.
I'm just kidding.
No.
Amen.
No.
I'm with you, sister.
I'm just kidding. I think number one, we as the American culture, the American society, I think we've gotten too big for our britches. I think that we're a little bit out of control in so many aspects. I think that there are massive issues and problems with our judicial system. I think there are massive problems with our political system and how we handle campaigns and politics and policy, and this whole so incredibly divided. Well, I'm not going to do anything for you because you didn't do anything for me and I don't like you. And like, I think that is asinine. I think that as a woman who recently got a mammogram and is still angry about the healthcare system and insurance and all of the drama that is, I think that we have so many aspects and facets in which we definitely need to grow and improve, that I think it's a little bit overwhelming. And so we can sit here and say, hey, if we fix this about this one section of America, about politics or about healthcare or about the judicial system, God forbid we actually put in a code of ethics for social or for Supreme Court justices. Oh my gosh, those poor judges. That was sarcasm in case you can't hear it over the air. But I think that there's so much wrong that we have an overwhelming future that I'm kind of nervous about. And I don't want to run away, and I don't want to move to Mexico or Canada or Finland or wherever. I definitely don't want to move to Russia. Mom and I had this conversation when we listened to that Lex Friedman podcast the other day. I'm thankful for that. I'm glad he's here. But I've never, ever had an overwhelming or even any interest in being like, we should go to Russia. I would love to live there. That would, like,
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe I'm just horrible, but
I probably wouldn't want to live in Russia, but I think there are there are some ecological vistas that are very similar to the aesthetic that I like. I really enjoy being in the mountains, and I think there are some places in Russia, not just the mountains, but I've read and seen that they have some really beautiful beaches too. And
Oh.
you guys know me, I love the cold,
yeah.
and I really enjoy being in the mountains. I would love to visit some of the natural beauty of Russia and Northeast Asia in general. I would love to visit, but yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't want to live there.
My teeth are chattering already. I'm already cold just thinking about it. Like, no, thank you. I can't live in Idaho. Like, that's too cold. There's no way I would survive in Russia. I would just die. And I hate vodka. I feel like we missed one. We talked a minute ago about people coming out in support of political candidates. And I sent you both a text message and neither of you responded to me, tisk tisk, about Putin coming out saying, I don't know that you would specifically call it an endorsement for Kamala Harris, but saying that that's who he would quote unquote prefer, and just what that means and looks like. And no, I feel like that's kind of him totally and completely sandbagging her. And I think he knows that.
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, it would be obvious that he would have a preference of what so far many people would have displayed as a party that has shown, what's the word that I'm looking for? Command and competence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they have handled military issues well at all since really the kind of the end of the Obama administration.
Yeah.
I think Obama could have done a better job,
Sure.
but I think he did a much better job than Biden has done. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, the world especially, I don't think we saw Joe Biden as an extension of the Obama administration. At least I did not. But I personally very much would view a Harris administration as an extension of a Biden administration, which to me is not an administration run and administered by Joe Biden, but one of the Democratic Party, which is even scarier to me, I think.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that, the extension part. And
Right.
I'm just thinking JFK was assassinated and LBJ became the president. I know that there were things, civil rights, he wanted to do in honor of JFK because that was what his administration, was believing in. But there were other things that he didn't. So I really feel like it's unfair to say an extension. I still feel like the VP role is kind of, it's like being the second son in a,
Ceremonial.
in an English, in the English ton, where you're only there if something happens to the first son, the
The
heir.
spare.
Yeah, you're the spare. And so you can go and do whatever you want to do and be whoever you want to be unless something happens to the heir. And then you got to come in and I kind of feel it's the same way with VPs. And I think that she will do things to honor Biden, or things that she also agrees with, like climate control. But we've seen some things, even this week that she's decided I'm not going to stay in line there.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, like, I was reading an article earlier this week about the way that she's trying to, I don't know that this is the right way to say it, but trying to kind of separate herself from the Biden administration and say, hey, while we are cut from the same cloth, we are not the same. We are not I'm not an extension of him in the same way that you might think. And so, especially with the capital gains tax, like, she wants to cut that like, she wants to change that way less than, I want to say by like 10%, something
But
like
wasn't that
that.
on new businesses? So it
It
had
was
a
on,
little caveat there.
yeah, but it's on all capital gains. But like the other part of this that I think is really important, we talked about voting based on policy versus characteristics and people, the popularity contest of it and all. But I think that it's also really important to pay attention to what that actually is and what those policies are. And like Cole said, like how feasible and the possibilities for them to be implemented. I think that that plays a role in it. But also, we're what, like 58 days away from the election. She's had 100 days total for her campaign, something like that. Like at the end of it, she'll have had like 100-day campaign, which in my personal opinion, I feel like every single campaign should be this, not
Amen.
every 4 years, all
Amen,
4
sister.
years. Like,
Yes.
let's condense it and get to the point and go.
Yes.
But I think that we don't have enough because she wasn't necessarily planning to run for president this year and wasn't putting together a whole platform to run on and what all of her policies were going to be. And so to some extent, I think that her team is doing a good job at hustling to get all of her platform built, and what that is and what that looks like. And I don't feel like they have had enough time for us to necessarily fully judge that and say, oh, well, she's going to do this, this, and this, and this. It's, hey, these are the top line points that she's going to try and address and the priorities, the list of priorities, but they haven't necessarily drilled down into, and this is how we're going to accomplish that. And this is what that is going to mean. And so you can sit here and be like, I don't like her take on the economy and she's horrible. And you're like, but we don't really know what that is yet. And I'm not saying that we don't have a clue, but there's still a lot that needs to be defined and figured out and justified and worked through before we can start really judging that. Now, that said, in 100 days, that's tough. I mean, I was listening to something the other day. These platforms take months and months and years to build. And she's done hers in 6 weeks. And it's not done and it's not complete. And if it was done and complete, I would be absolutely mortified because you can't put together a platform in 6 weeks and have it all figured out. There's too much. It's too vast of a task. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that they're doing good and that the things that the priorities list aligns more with my priority list. Is it identical? Is it the same? Is it exactly what I want? Absolutely not. But it definitely aligns more with what's in my heart and what makes sense to me and for the people that I surround myself with. And that ranges from billionaires to children. I mean, that's everybody.
Well, and I'm going to say the thing that I've appreciated for where she's at is that there seems to be a level of optimism and a level of kindness,
decency
that I've not seen in a really long time. And I may be off, but I appreciate that. When you were talking before, Callie, about where you saw us, the thing that you didn't say this word, but the thing that came out was we as Americans are not very humble. And we may need to be humble.
Yes.
And, you know, the other thing that I see is the division, that if you're not going to agree with me, then I can't have anything to do with you. And that meanness, that I think is so much a part of our life now, opinionated. And so maybe it was really funny because the whole time you were talking, I just thought, oh, she's talking about humility.
Yeah.
we need to get some humility. And I mean, we can either learn that on our own and incorporate it into our lives, or somebody's going to hand it to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're going to be humbled, and that's going to come in. And I'm really
it's good,
afraid
and
that
it's going to hurt.
it's going to come in the form of a civil war, a revolution against kind of the entertainment value that politics has
You
turned
know, it may
into
not
for
even
the
be
people.
a civil war, but
I hope not.
it will be a January 6th on a much larger scale,
Yeah.
where people are just shocked
Yeah.
or adamant that
Scared.
this was the right thing to do,
Mhm.
scared. And
I think
so, I
fear is
mean,
such a good
it's very
motivator.
interesting.
I
You
want
think
to
fear is?
I think fear is a successful motivator, not necessarily a good motivator, but a successful motivator.
Yeah, I would agree
yeah,
with
I
that.
think it's the easiest to use and
Mhm.
also the worst ethically speaking.
Yes.
But I want to back up, and because I have a little bit of a disagreement with something that you said earlier. But before that, I need to make a confession, because I think you two are really, really hitting the nail on the head with the humility issue. And that's something that I struggle with deeply. You two probably already know this, and I've talked to you about it a few times before, but I oftentimes suffer from a bit of a superiority complex. Um,
No.
and I have I don't know that I've been doing a great job of it, but I have been trying recognize it at least, and I am often humbled in many situations, and I probably don't always do as good of a job as I should at owning my own mistakes. I try really hard to, but I'm also very, very stubborn, as you two know well. But I want to back up a little bit to something that you said earlier, Callie, about 6 weeks not being enough time to build a platform. I disagree for a couple of reasons, and this is going to lead me to a little bit of a larger point. Kamala Harris has been the vice president for 4 years. And so when you are the vice president, like Mom talked about earlier, a huge part of your job is to be ready to step in and take the reins if something were to happen to the president.
Yes,
So you should
absolutely.
already have your plan designed. Now, having a plan set in place as a contingency in a fluid situation like that, I'm not saying is something that is easy to do. If you're already in that role, if you already have to be ready to step up and fill those shoes, you should already have a plan in place.
But Cole, there's a difference between having her plan in place
Right.
and her being ready to execute the president's plan.
Right.
She steps in as president. If there is a reason for her to step in and he is no longer viable as a president, it is her show now. She doesn't
But
have to
there's a
follow through with
transition
his
there.
plan.
No, there's a transition there, though, that is different than if you're running for president and you're trying to bring the American people on board with you. There's a difference there of
Versus
getting that
supporting your
ready
president.
versus
Which is
transition.
why she should already have a plan in place, because she would have to go through a similar transition if she was elected. I'm not saying that they're exactly the same,
Yeah.
but I don't agree entirely with she doesn't have enough time to come up. She should already know her stance on these positions. She shouldn't have waited until Biden stepped out of the race to make up her mind on these policies. In her position, she has been in government for a long time. She's not new to this. She should already have her policy positions in place. And I'm not saying that she can't change her mind. Changing your mind is oftentimes a very good thing as new information comes to light.
Sure.
But the reason I make that point is because this is one of the things that I would change about our political system as it is now, is that regardless of the office that you are running for, I don't care if it's the president, down to a mayor of a podunk town with 500 people, if you are running for public office, there should be a term limit for everyone, period, from
Agreed.
mayor all the
Amen.
way up through the president to Supreme Court justices.
Yes, yes, yes.
Period. Period. If you are an elected official and you are running on a policy platform, you should
You are
have
on
a
the clock.
plan. You are on the clock. And even if it says, okay, I have 2 terms, when you're running for your first term as president, you should say, this is my plan for an 8-year term. Here is how I'm going to accomplish it. If by year 4, your next campaign season, you have not completed you have not made the goalposts that you have set for your first 4-year term, you don't get to run again.
Interesting. I kind of like that in theory for sure. And I think that that's such a fascinating way to look at it. And I think that that also kind of puts it in their court as a politician. Again, from the local level all the way up to the presidency, I think that that puts it in their court to prove themselves and to kind of make sure that they're effectively updating their resume. Hey, I said I was going to do this. This is the progress that I have made. This is what I have to show for it. These are my next steps. I think is absolutely a fabulous, I'm running all my words together, a fabulous plan and way to hold people accountable. And I mean, I was reading something, we were talking about what I was fact checking during the Trump interview with Lex Friedman. That stupid freaking immigration chart drives me nuts. The one that saved his life, I think, is asinine. And it's all lies. Like, it's all lies. It's complete garbage. But I think that when you sit down and start looking at, we're going to build a wall, we're going to build this wall. I mean, we're Texans, right? And so that is a lot closer to home than it may be for somebody in Iowa. And what that means and how that affects us, especially here in Houston, like it has an impact that is felt. And so when you actually get down to kind of the brass tacks of it, I want to say, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. I'm not smart enough to retain all of the numbers of it, but I want to say it was something like 57 miles of wall that Trump instigated, initiated, that actually came to fruition. And in the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket. It was not this big, huge, impactful thing. That's not to say that there wasn't additional miles of wall, but like most of it that he is taking credit for was already scheduled and had funds allocated for, hey, these pieces of fence and barrier are old and dilapidated and need to be fixed and need to be shored up, right? Isn't that what it's called? And like that had already been appropriated, and then he comes in and takes credit for it, and you're like, you didn't do that, buddy. I mean, I get it, but if he had come in like an honorable, decent human being and said, guys, I told you I was going to build this wall. This is how much progress I've made. This is what I have and haven't been able to accomplish. This is how I plan to make the next set of progress and the next steps in forward momentum of all of that. Cool. Great. Like, that's helpful. And that's
Okay. We were just
reasonable.
looking at the bias chart.
Yeah.
And even in fact checking that there was bias. So
Mhm.
while I agree, Cole, that's a great idea, I'm just sitting here trying to figure out how you implement it. Because do you really, I mean, if you listen to Trump today, he's going to tell you that he had the best presidency in the world and he accomplished more in his presidency. So who gets to say these were the 4 things that he committed to in his campaign and why we elected him, and these 4 things are at what status? Because we live in this crazy world where truth isn't truth.
It's not valued the way that it used to be, I feel like.
It's not even presented the way that it used to be, because now
Agreed.
anything you feel can be the truth, which
Right.
is ridiculous from my perspective.
Is that
But
in your thing that
I
you,
was just
you
wondering.
read to us? Is there anything in there about feelings are not truth?
feelings are feelings, not truth. No, but it should be added. That's a great
Yeah.
point.
I think
Real
we need to
quick,
put that in our
Cal,
show notes, and I think we need to
yeah.
figure out who to
to
give credit
attribute it to. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we can add our own line about truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, asterisk.
Yeah.
Did
So
you find the
before,
stats on border wall?
yeah, before his presidency, various types of fencing totaling 654 miles, just over 1,000 kilometers, and this is per BBC,
That was my
were
next
already in
question.
place before Mr. Trump became president in 2017. These ran through California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. The Trump administration say that they have completed more than 400 miles of border wall since then. It's 452 miles in total, according to the latest U.S. Customs and Border Protection information from January of 2021. However, only 80 miles of new barriers have been built that built where there were none before.
Right.
That includes 47 miles of primary wall and 33 miles of secondary wall built to reinforce the initial barrier. The vast majority of the 452 miles is replacing existing structures at the border that had been built by previous U.S. administrations.
Right, which is exactly my point. He's coming in, taking credit for all nearly 500 miles of border wall when he built, what'd you say, 88?
80.
80? And that's where, Mom, you said a minute ago, we were talking about like how do we classify those things? I feel like this is an opportunity for the American society, us as Americans, to come together and say, hey, these are the determining factors that are important to us. And maybe that is, and
The
it doesn't have
criteria.
to be like this, what? Criteria. Yes. Yes. The criteria. Thank you. These are the criteria that we're taking into consideration. And maybe that is equality and it doesn't matter where you stand, but the kind of bucket that falls in is equality, immigration, in the economy, like whatever that is. And we can start saying, okay, these are the factors by which we measure everybody. And I think that we can figure that out. Whether we agree on how positive or negative your specific impact is to those things, these are the factors. These are the criteria that we take into consideration and we're holding you accountable for. I think would be really advantageous to us as humans, as a society.
Let's move it that way. I like that idea really well. I like term limits. I like the idea that you'd have to be accountable. That would be really nice.
Yeah, if you didn't say what you said you were going to do, then...
we don't believe you anymore.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We as normal Americans, we don't have time to go and check it, because they can say they did it, just like Trump says he built 500 miles of wall, but they really only added 80 miles of new wall, and only 52 of that was primary wall. And so if you go and you make these bold claims, then I think you're absolutely right. We do have to figure out a way, and it absolutely, I am disgusted with myself for saying this, but there's gonna have to be some alphabet soup agency that is their entire purpose. I think we defund the ATF and fund a new alphabet agency that their sole purpose is to use the funding that the ATF currently has to track these claims by politicians.
You just need to ask Elon to do that, Cole. He'll do it.
I just threw up in my mouth like 16 times. I feel like if, as we, as a society, as a culture, we could say, hey, these are the 10 points that are important to us. And I think that those are going to change with time and as history educates us on what worked and what didn't, or what was or wasn't important. These are the 10 factors in which the criteria we are judging you as a political factor. Then it doesn't matter which media outlet is posting the story, whether you have a CNN article saying, hey, here's all of so-and-so's scores on these 10 things versus New York Times versus NPR. Everybody's using those same 10 factors. Well, 10, I have no idea, but and it's all in one place. So then you can start pinpointing and spotting, okay, hey, we talked about this over here. We saw it on CNN and we know that their bias leans this way. So let me take into consideration this one that kind of counterbalances it so that I can actually form my own opinion. But we've made it a little bit more manageable, palatable, so that you can absorb it and you can entertain those kind of thoughts and ideas and say, okay, on Fox News, Trump has built the best border wall in history and it's 500 miles long and he's just done the best job, versus NPR, who's like, he's added 80 miles of stuff. Like, let's be realistic here. And so then you know that those two organizations are going to have that bias and have that swing. Okay, cool. And then it is our job as decent humans, as citizens, to form our own opinions and do some research and say, hey, I know I'm biased here. I need to counteract this. I need to get the actual truth. And this is what that does or doesn't look like.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we as Americans need to do that. One of the problems right now is that we don't.
Oh, agreed.
And I
Because
think a
it's
lot
so
of people,
hard.
not only is it really hard, but I think a lot of people have gotten to the point where they realize that their thoughts don't really matter that much in the grand scheme of thing, and so they just don't care. And like I understand where they're coming from, but that's a really nihilistic view
Yeah.
that is in the long run kind of hard to stomach. But to kind of illustrate this point, I was showing this to Mom a couple of weeks ago. There was a Princeton study that public opinion has near zero impact on U.S. law. Like, if
Yeah.
if something has a 100% support from the public, it has about a 30% chance of being passed by Congress. If something has a 0% public opinion, it has about a 30% chance of being passed by Congress. And you're the only thing that it just boggles my mind absolutely that this is the reality that we live in. That why do we keep voting for these people if they don't care? Because
Right.
we have our own lives to live. We don't have time to do research and understand. All we know is what CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or the New York Times or NPR or whoever we get our news from. All we know is what they tell us, because I don't have time to go and read every single one of those to try and figure out what's in the middle. It's almost like you throw a dart, pick one, and this is my policy now. And because we have lives, we have to go to work 40 hours a week. We have families to take care of. We have meals to cook. We have hobbies to feed. So many people don't want to take the time, even though it's incredibly important to understand the reality that is going on around you in a moment to moment existence. It just kind of falls to the wayside because it's like a lagging indicator almost, where it doesn't affect you moment to moment. And it does, but it's really hard to see it that way.
Okay, to quote Glennon Doyle, we can do hard things. We absolutely can do hard things. And this is such a monumental hard thing that we suck at. We have
I completely
decided that
agree.
we've decided it's too hard. We've decided it's too big. We've decided that it's just too much to take on. It's so overwhelming. And that responsibility and that accountability falls on us as Americans. We have gotten lazy with ourselves, and therefore down the line with our politicians, with our leaders, with our neighbors, and we are not holding each other accountable at any level.
It's why we are where we are. You're exactly right.
It is why we are where we are. And that's wrong for us. And so while I get that it's hard, I also am a firm believer that unless you are willing to do something about it, do not complain. Unless you are willing to vote, do not complain. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, at least in my opinion. Our culture is so fractured in so many different areas and so many different facets that we have become overwhelmed, that we're just like, well, I can't care about anything and I can't fix anything, so I'm just going to care about nothing. And that's wrong.
Yeah, our egos are so fragile that it is
Yeah.
more important to complain about something being wrong than
Then
to
to fix
simply
it.
do the work to fix it.
Yes.
I had a conversation with your dad this week, and my result from that was because you are afraid of something happening doesn't mean that you should eliminate all conversation about it. That doesn't help.
We've buried
You,
our heads in the sand,
yes.
which doesn't fix
So,
anything. Yeah.
yeah,
It's worse than that. We have buried our heads in the sand and we're kicking the people to the left and right of us
Whose
because
heads are
they
also
have
buried.
they have buried their heads in the sand.
Yeah.
you're right. I don't disagree with you on that.
Which is just feels like to me like such a lack of accountability for ourselves, for our friends. And that has turned into this like humongous snowball effect. And it's like, oh, well, we're just all going to bury our heads and kick and scream and throw a fit and do nothing. Like there's no progress made by kicking your neighbors, by burying your head in the sand. It doesn't fix or change anything. You just look like a jerk.
We've become jerks.
We've become selfish jerks. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene like screams in my head right now. We have become too accepting of that, of this. Well, I'm going to throw a big, huge fit. And, it really is that old adage of the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Donald Trump is getting the grease because we're giving it to him. Because he keeps sitting here talking and he keeps sitting here running his mouth and he keeps convincing people that what he is saying is important or matters or is true. And so we're giving him the grease. Whether it fixes the problem or not, we're giving him the grease.
So, Callie, how do we as a society change course? How do we take 330 million people that in general seem to almost completely lack self-awareness and have this level of indifference about everything that is not them? How do we change our society culturally? Almost feel like without gasoline and a spark,
I was just going to say, we burn it down.
yeah, I mean,
We're going to be on a terrorist watch list, like for sure. I'm
That's what
sorry,
I was
FBI,
thinking.
CIA. I don't actually mean that. I'm not an arsonist. I'm not going to burn down anybody's house or the White House or any of this. But God, it's just so crappy right now. I think, Cole, to answer your question truthfully, we decide. We decide something, whatever it is. And I think that we need to hold each other individually on a teeny tiny level. You, me, and mom, we hold each other accountable. What is important to you and what are you doing about it to fix it? And then we watch those ripples, because the moment that I start holding you accountable and you start holding Nate accountable and Nate starts holding Victoria accountable and Victoria starts holding Bart accountable, I think that the moment that we all start holding on a granular level, we all start holding each other accountable, that's when change happens. And it starts building and that ripple effect just continues to grow. I do not accept and I do not tolerate indifference or ignorance. That woman who called it fraud because I didn't want to, I elected to self-pay instead of use my insurance, that's a lie. And I do not let her, and I'm not just sitting here going, okay, well, she just doesn't actually know the definition of insurance fraud. I had a conversation, multiple conversations with her at the doctor's office and then with the office manager saying, this is unacceptable, this is not right, this is inaccurate, you need to do something about it. And whether they fix it or not, that's my version of accountability on a teeny tiny level, that I have to start somewhere. I have to do something or I do not get to complain.
So you're talking about involvement.
Yes, I think we have to start somewhere so that we can start evolving.
Everyone has to come to the table.
Yes. And then you start finding people who agree that this is the table that they want to come to. Hey, mom, let's go and tackle healthcare and figure out what we can do, and go find other people. Hey, you're pissed off about the same thing. How do we do this? Let's start growing our table. Let's start welcoming people to our table because they're pissed off about healthcare too. Is it the only issue? Absolutely not. But is it something that I'm passionate about, that I should be relaying that frustration into action? Absolutely. And so start opening yourselves up and opening your conversations up with other people who, whether you agree with everything about it, agree on this one point and make impact.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and one that needs to be reiterated is I think it's really important to not only invite like-minded individuals to that table. I think it's really important to invite people who feel differently
Yes.
than you to that table, so that you can have those other perspectives, so that you can find a solution that is
Progress.
suitable for everyone.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
because if you don't, you just end up right back in this situation that we're in right now, where everything is so tribalized and so divisive
Siloed. Mhm.
that you can't even talk to people that have a different opinion than you, because they are somehow less.
Right.
They shouldn't be viewed as less. They should be viewed as different. And if your feelings are valid, their feelings should be just as valid. Now, that doesn't mean that either of your feelings are right. Your feelings can be wrong. And
Yes.
everyone needs to understand that just because you feel a certain type of way doesn't mean that that's how you should feel.
Yes.
But if you're only in an echo chamber, you're only going to get reinforcement that just you are right. Just your feelings are right, and everyone else can buzz off.
Yeah. But
which
that's
is ridiculous.
That's what I was trying to say. And if I said it wrong and stumbled over my words, I certainly apologize. But that's what I'm trying to get at. Open up yourself to your table, or open up your table to people who this particular thing matters to them, whether you agree with them or not, to get that well-rounded perspective so that you guys can start finding teeny tiny solutions, because those individual teeny tiny solutions, again, have that ripple effect and turn into bigger things. And I 100% wholeheartedly agree. You cannot do that. You will never be successful in an echo chamber. You will never be successful if you're only willing to talk to people who are like you and believe the same things as you. I'm amped up, guys. I'm pumped. I'm amped. I'm going to go fix this. I'm so freaking mad.
I'll come to your soapbox anytime.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. But be willing to help.
You got it. I can strongman an argument like few others can.
I agree.
This is
You're
true.
excellent. But I think, you guys, this again just further illustrates why I am so adamant and excited about doing this podcast with the two of you and putting this out into the world, because you do not have to agree to make progress. You do not have to agree to be educated. In fact, the more you disagree, the better your education becomes. The wider breadth of things, of perspective you get, and that is only beneficial to you.
Yeah,
You
the
have
better the
more of the
outcome
picture.
is.
Yeah, I'm so excited, y'all. One of these days I'll stop saying that. I hope not, but maybe. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it, but I'm really excited.
Not even a little bit.
Okay. So, I think that's probably an ending note for the moment for that conversation. We've had a conversation this week about, is it appropriate for politicians to cuss?
I think
So
even just your
let's kinda
question
go into
right
something
there.
funnier. Do what?
I think even just the way that you phrased that there, appropriate, is such an interesting word there. I saw a tidbit about Tim Walz. I think that his preferred curse word, swear word, whatever you want to call it, is damn. And so he comes in and he comes to these rallies and he's like, mind your own damn business. And he says this, and I feel like we're in a really interesting time in what will soon be history, where curse words are becoming less, how do I say
Impactful.
this? Impactful. That's a perfect word. Taboo. Yes. Both
Taboo.
of those are great. And so we're watching these politicians come out and we're cheering and rooting for them when they say, mind your own damn business. I think that it's not specifically to Tim Walz. I think that it's going on across the board in many more ways than it ever has before. Can you imagine Abraham Lincoln coming out and being like, free the damn slaves? Like that just wasn't the thing, whether he thought it or felt that way, either way. But I think that time has changed, and we as a culture have have decided and have evolved into thinking that curse words are less impactful and less taboo. And so having this conversation, I was so curious as to what you guys think. So just to give our listeners a little bit of perspective, Cole and I grew up in a very Christian house. And manners were important, and being reasonable and good humans was a specific goal for our parents and things like that. Tooting your horn, Mom. I think y'all did a really good job with us for the most part. We're not perfect.
Okay, you're
but
saying
we're
this, and
decent.
I'm thinking about when Cole got in trouble for cussing it when he was in first grade, and it was my fault.
But should I really have gotten in trouble for saying bullshit to two of my friends who broke my pencil and threw it through a fence? Because that was bullshit. That's a reasonable expletive. I don't even. That's a reasonable
Maybe not for a
word for that.
6-year-old.
So, but who
Just
determines that?
You guys know that I told you growing up that there were words that were not appropriate for children to use.
I also know that we were sitting in the car and your version of road rage was calling people tits, you big tit. I mean, and it was hysterical. And I still remember that. I'm 36 years old, and I still remember my mom calling people a tit because she was angry with them. Or, I mean, I think that, I don't know. I want to know who decided and when it was decided that shit is a bad word. And we're just, as a culture, not going to say it.
I'm going to ask you this question. Is it appropriate for a police officer to stop you for something and scream vulgarities at you?
Does it
Well,
not
as a-
depend on the situation? If he stops
Yeah,
you
I
for
mean-
speeding and be like,
Does it?
you crazy bitch, we're going 52 and a 50. I don't think that's probably necessary or productive.
I
Or
mean,
I'm
here's the thing.
effing taking you to jail.
If it's conversational, then hey, man, you need to slow the hell down. Okay, I got it. You're
You're right.
emphasizing a point. Like that's I get that. If it's here, you SOB, I'm gonna beat your ass because I don't like your haircut. That's completely different.
And inappropriate.
I think context is really important. If part
Yeah.
of your everyday language is swear words,
Oh.
personally, that doesn't offend me. But you coming at me and cursing to me and cursing around me and cursing me are wildly different.
Yeah.
I don't particularly care the words that you use. I talk to clients all of the time that swear, and the clients that it doesn't matter the words that they use, as long as those words are not directed at me, I don't care. But as soon as it's listen here, you MFer or SOB, okay, look, we are both in a professional setting. We need to treat each other professionally. You don't get to speak to me like that. If you want to describe a situation as effed up or as bullshit or this whole world has gone to hell in a handbasket, doesn't bother me at all.
Because it's not directed at you.
Yeah. It's just words.
Yeah.
Now, if you call me a dickhead, then I might be a little offended. If you call me an asshole, now, if I'm being an asshole, then I'm being an asshole, and I probably deserve that. And it's not going to bother me that you called me an asshole because probably deserved it. And I call people assholes when they deserve it.
But that requires self-awareness that I don't think that we're very good at as a culture.
Well, we should be. That's part of the
Totally
thing
agree.
that we need
Accountability,
to fix.
accountability. Yes, totally
Yeah,
agree.
absolutely. And
Okay,
so,
I'm just going to say, I think there are limits. And we've had this conversation because we've been having this conversation. But I don't think you walk in blind to somebody that you don't know and start using foul language. I
Yes.
just don't think you should because you don't know that person. And I think it's a sign of respect that you don't start there. Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay,
kind of like
so-
you escalated up and there was no reason to escalate up.
But
So I think there are places that's inappropriate.
I don't see it as an escalation. I see it as just a part of someone's vocabulary. Can it be used to escalate? Sure, but it's not always that.
And I know that you are going to say to me, it's not your responsibility for someone else's reaction. But if that person is not used to that kind of language or has been raised that kind of language is wrong or inappropriate, whatever, and you come in using it, you've already set a level of tension.
Then that
That
person can come to me and say, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with you using this language. Could you try not to use it around me? And I would say, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I wasn't trying to offend you. I'll do my best. I can't
That's
promise
respect.
anything, but that's just a respectful response to that request. But I should not need to censor myself around everyone because a
You
few
might
people might
offend
be
them.
offended. Yeah, like it's not my job to not offend people. If you're offended by what I say, then come and talk to me about it reasonably, and we can come to a consensus and say, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I apologize. I'll try and be better when I'm around you. But that doesn't mean that I should just off the bat put in so much effort to not offending people, because I'm going to speak my mind. That's who I am. That's how we should be. And I want other people to speak their minds to me because I think that's genuine and authentic.
And I
so
think
you'd be
that
okay with any politician coming to you and saying whatever.
I mean, in general, yeah. Do I think that our politicians should be taking a world stage and saying F so-and-so and screw that guy and these people are all effed up? Probably not. I don't think that's a very professional look. But if Tim Walz is standing at a podium and says, mind your own damn business, I'm going to say, hell yeah, mind your own damn business.
So damn and hell and shit are appropriate, are acceptable.
I don't care what it
Is
is.
there a
I
limit?
am
but
I am
hold on.
catering to the podcast with censoring myself right now, and I am trying very, very
You're
hard.
doing an awesome job. You're doing a great job. But here's my question. And it kind of goes back to one of the things that Cole was saying earlier. If it is in direct reference to you, if you call Cole a jackass, it would be accusing him of something, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's still like putting that on him. So mind your own damn business isn't putting it on Cole, isn't putting it on anybody specifically, like you do you. It's not attacking their character. Now, if you come out and say, I hate to use this example just because I feel like it's so polarizing, but I don't really know a better one. I'm so nervous about this. Donald Trump coming out and calling Kamala Harris a bitch is not appropriate. It's attacking her as a her character as a human being. If you want to sit here and say she's being a jackass and have facts to back that up that make sense, or if she's, I don't know how you can do it towards someone.
So you're saying jackass is okay, but bitch isn't? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's kind of why I'm struggling here. I think that it's...
see, I see them as basically the same thing. Like,
I
if
do
you're
too.
coming at me a type of way and you're being a bitch, then I'm going to tell you you're being a bitch. If you're acting like a jackass, I'm going to tell you you're being a jackass. Like, I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
I think y'all are speaking with fork and tongue.
I don't know what that means.
I think y'all are saying that it's okay sometimes to attack that person, and
no,
sometimes it's not.
I think that it's all contextual. And so, okay, let me say this. I've used this example in my daily life for a long time. Growing up, I was Cole's big sister. And I could sit here and call him a dork all day long. But the moment that somebody else calls him a dork, that is completely unacceptable. That is my brother. You do not get to talk about him like that. You do not get to put that on him. You do not have that privilege to call him a dork. And I think that it's the same in this specific context. I don't think that we have the right to go and verbally attack other people's character without that context, without knowing them and being well versed in who they are. And at the end of the day, I think politics, we have turned it, especially in America, we have turned it into a form of entertainment for us. And oh, this is going to be fun to watch. Hell, I said it earlier about this. I'm excited to listen to the Meghan McCain podcast about her brother and all of this. I think that you have to have the context with that person. I do not know Donald Trump personally. I cannot sit here. I can form an opinion about him and what I think about him, but to sit here and go and put that on him face to face would be disrespectful. Not because I like Donald Trump, not because I think that he's a good guy, but I don't have enough context and I don't know him on a personal level that I get to apply those things to him.
Yeah, I think I need to backpedal here a little bit because I think you're much more accurate, closer to how I feel. I think you're probably right. I think Donald Trump saying Kamala Harris is a bitch is probably inappropriate. In a one-on-one conversation, I would not quite feel the same way. If they are speaking privately to each other and
Yes.
and someone is behaving in a specific way, then I think that in that particular situation, it may be appropriate if they have a relationship like that. I think, Mom, you're probably right, where it would be inappropriate for a politician who is representing our society to be calling people names. I don't think that's how that we should be behaving as Americans.
It's not productive for sure.
Yeah, and so I think I
I
have
feel
to
like I just
backpedal a
won an
little bit there.
argument.
Winner, winner, winner. But again, I think it's all contextual. We had this conversation just briefly the other night. Callie, while I don't really care which words you guys use and all of that, you're not offending me by whatever it is. The moment that you start inflicting those words on me and my character, I think is really crappy. But I think that it is all so contextual in that it would break my heart. It would break my heart to see any president. This is somebody that we are supposed to consider a role model for the world, not just for our country, but for the world. That role is supposed to be, is designated as the number one most powerful person in the world. Like I would be so disappointed to hear an F word fly in a State of the Union address. I think that would be inappropriate.
I think State of the Unions should get like 1 or 2. I think they can be PG-13. I was just thinking the exact opposite. Like in a situation, like if a politician came out and said, hey, the water in Flint, Michigan is fucked up and we need to fix it, I would be okay with that. Because I think that's them speaking honestly.
I don't know.
But if it was like...
But you could say the same thing without using the F word.
And I think that when you say the same thing without using the F word in that context, in the State of the Union, to the world, to America, I think it changes the way that you are
Perceived.
Perceived, yes, exactly.
I think it makes it more personal. I think it what's the word that I think it emphasizes the point to a more severe level where, hey, yeah, the water in Flint, Michigan is bad, is not nearly as critical as the water in Flint, Michigan is effed up and we need to fix it now.
So some super religious, I don't even care what religion, where swearing is not part of their belief, but this is their president, whether they voted for them or not. This is their president. They can't have their children sit here and watch that now because it's tainted.
That's exactly where I was going. So my 6-year-old is going to hear the president of the United States in a State of the Union
that I taught them.
If your 6-year-old is in public school, I promise they've already heard it.
Well, I don't disagree with you
but
on
hearing
that.
it and using it, I think, and so we're sitting here saying, hey, I've determined that I don't want my 6-year-old saying the F word. And now somebody like the president of the United States is using it to make a point, which you're right. The water in Flint, Michigan is totally screwed up and that sucks. But I have taught my 6-year-old that that's not an appropriate thing. And now you're setting an example that it is, that it's acceptable.
Then
and it is
your
acceptable
job
eventually.
as the parent to censor the media that your child is consuming, not the rest of the world's.
That's fair.
Well, that's a little bitty tiny job.
I remember there used to be websites, I'm sure there still are, but it was like curse word counters. So it's like, hey, I'm gonna go see this movie. Okay, here's how many F words it is, here's how many S words there are, here's how many times it says hell, so you can make your determination. And maybe we just have to have a disclaimer at the beginning. But that doesn't make any sense, y'all. We're gonna put a disclaimer and say, okay, this president uses that word frequently, so watch your kids, cover their ears for the next hour and a half, because this is gonna suck.
You shouldn't be watching something for the first time with your child anyways, unless it has a rating like that. Period.
Live television.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. I know that there are politicians who, because it has been a man-dominated arena, that there is language different used if it's just a bunch of guys than if you're in public.
But isn't that what got Trump kind of in hot water the first election? Oh, it was just locker room talk. Nobody was supposed to hear that. It was just a hot mic that picked it up by accident, and now we're going to use it against him. Like, again, I'm not here trying to defend Donald Trump, but wasn't that what that was? That doesn't make it
exactly
appropriate
what it
to
was.
share.
I am so exhausted of trying to of spending so much energy
Tiptoe.
to walk on eggshells around people for the sake of being proper. Like, I don't think that is something that is that important. I just personally don't.
I don't think it's a matter of being proper. I think it is
I think it's decency.
I
I
think it's
think that you're
respect,
forcing and
decency.
inflicting your beliefs, which are totally fine and yours, on other people. And I don't think that inflicting that on somebody else is minding your own damn business. The one that you just held you at a minute ago, I don't think that that's minding your own damn business.
I don't understand how the words that I use are forcing my beliefs on anyone. It's simply vocabulary that I use.
It's not a matter of forcing your beliefs on someone. It's a matter of understanding that there are differences in your audience.
Right. I mean, we were talking a minute ago about everybody coming to the table with different perspectives about whatever issue so that we can hear each other and we can understand each other. And I think that that's really important. But I think that knowing that those differences exist are absolutely imperative. But I think being respectful of the people around you and how you go about dealing with somebody whose opinion and perspective is different from yours is also really important. You know, we started talking about Mom's got a friend who she grew up with an abusive alcoholic dad. And so my mom doesn't use swear words around her friend because that triggers her. And I think that, like I said this the other night when we were talking about it, while I respect Mom's choice to do that, I think that that's fantastic for her and super reasonable and respectful for her. And I don't think that it is necessarily her responsibility to censor herself. I think that it's respectful that she chooses to and to be kind, and that's the way that she shows kindness to this friend of hers.
It's an interesting discussion.
Well, and I think that the part that we haven't really talked about is the line of it. So we can sit here and say, okay, if you believe that it's okay for Tim Walz to say, mind your own damn business, and that's where the line is, you can say damn and you can say shit, like, okay, cool. A, who gets to set the line? How do we decide on that? And B, I think it really does have to be defined and spelled out because of our own intolerance for somebody else. Like I said a minute ago, like, this is my own bias that I have to address. I think that I would be more cringeworthy, or it would induce more of a cringe reaction to hear Donald Trump get up and start sharing expletives. I personally don't want our politicians going crazy with this.
So we have a pyramid. If you're this level, you can't say these words, but if you're below that level, you can say those words. And if you're below that level, you can say
shitty.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, I
so
think
shit. But
that's
I like
I
your,
think
I
that's
like
just a
your,
waste of energy.
but I do kind of like your rating system, Cole. Like the movies, what is that called? There's a name for that. Mature audience. I don't remember what it is,
Yeah,
but like
age
it.
ratings.
It's rating.
Okay, so I maybe that's what it is. And so okay, we know that Tim Wall says shit and damn, so he's PG. And so then going into whatever event with him, like you can make that decision for yourself. If you want to go and participate, then you know that there's going to be some shits and some dams. And that's
But
just what it is.
why are those less offensive than
That's
other
a
swear
great question.
words?
That's what I'm saying. Like, where do you draw the line and who gets to
Yeah.
decide? I like the
Like,
rating system because it's already defined. Like you said before we started this episode, we're not actively trying to swear routinely on this podcast because we don't want to alienate people who are listening. Like, hey, you can't listen to their show when you're in the car with your kids because they're going to pop off with who knows what. Like, that sucks. And so we're not trying to do that, but also we're sitting here having a conversation about swear words and what is and isn't appropriate. So there are going to be some. And I don't know, like, who gets to define that and who gets to say that? And Cole said, he's like, if we keep it PG-13, you at least get one F word. Every PG-13 gets one F word. And so I feel like I like the idea of that rating system based on the person and say, okay, we know that this person is going to have a more strict rating, or not strict. That's not the right word. What is that? A lower level or a higher level rating?
Higher rating, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, that's an NC-17. I mean, and maybe age isn't the right way to do it, but this is rated R. You're gonna get some words, and so be prepared. Just know that.
So that's an interesting thing. So I'm going to go back. In 1939, when Gone with the Wind was released,
Frankly,
it
my
was a
dear, I
big
don't give a damn.
deal. I don't give a damn. And I remember going to that movie when it was re-released.
I was going to
What,
say, you're really aging yourself
20?
from
No,
1939.
it was a long time after that. It must have been, I don't know. It must have been the 50 year
So if
that
there had been
I
movies
went.
100 years before that, do you think the society then would have had the same problem?
Well, and that's really, you're making my point, and that is that far back, damn was a huge thing. Today, nobody questions Tom Walsh saying damn.
Tim.
I mean, the truth is, nobody really cares if Tom Walsh says damn.
Tim.
So our level has, I, I don't know if you say it's come up or if it's deteriorated, but what has happened is that more things are acceptable. Things that even a man in when I was growing up would never say words in front of me when I was growing up. It's not my children use today, so there's
So
it
in and God forbid, in 70 years when we're all gone and it's completely different and nobody cares, and there's a new group of curse words. Why? Why are those words bad?
I don't know why they're bad. I don't know who gets to decide what,
See, that's
if
not good enough
if
for me.
Callie said screwed a while ago or sucked, and those could be considered bad words, but they're not the F word. So you have a point, and I don't know I don't know who determines what are bad words or not.
I mean, I think generally it's got to be societal, but I mean,
But those societies are different. So now you're saying that if you're an American, you can say more than if you're Brit or if you're a
well,
Chilean
Brits
or
Brits quite famously swear a lot in common speech. I don't know about their politicians. I don't watch their politicians very much at all, really. But I mean,
not to be flippant here, but that means you're just screwed wherever you go.
And that's exactly my point. Like, why have we decided that these words are words that children can't hear? Why are these words bad words?
I don't know the answer to this.
And that's and that's my whole point. Like, that's not good enough for me. Like, if it's just because it offends some people, that's not enough reason for me not to use those words, to not say those things, because again, it's not my job to not offend people.
What if we put
If
it
you
on the
don't,
ballot? What if we vote and say, hey, and I think that it would have to be different than like yes or no, straight party, whatever. Like, I think it could be more like ranked voting, if you will. But hey, on a scale of 1 to 10 for this word, how offended or how likely or appropriate or not appropriate do you believe? And then so again, it puts it on the responsibility of us as a nation. If this is important to you to have your voice heard, go and vote. Go vote for swear words and what it is and what you accept and all whatever. And so then we can say, okay, these are the swear words that we've decided as a nation. This is what it is. And this is what we're all, the general consensus. This is what we believe. And so we're going to abide by this. And then here in 10 years, because history has only showed us that we evolve as a people and we change. And so we're going to revisit this in 10 years or whatever it is. And
well, I
then we're
mean,
going to
isn't
take
that
a general
already the job
consensus.
isn't that already the job of the FCC? Like, they get to determine what you can and can't say on TV. And this brings up something that I was
Yeah.
thinking about earlier. Like, I was making dinner when I got home last night, and Shauna was watching some like competing. It's not really like a game show, like, but it's kind of I don't know what it was. Some competition show where people from other shows have competed on other shows, and now they're competing on this show. I don't know. It was weird.
Please
I don't
tell me
watch
it was
reality
Bachelor in
TV.
Paradise.
I have no idea. But I mean, these people are swearing constantly, so that it's just like beep, 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 like every couple of words. And like, I'm almost more offended that they're censoring those words than the fact that the people are using those words. Because like, I personally don't really care. But here's the thing. If you are someone who believes that those words shouldn't be used and that those words are offensive, then you shouldn't be watching that show, regardless of whether it's censored or not. It doesn't make it okay for them to use those words because they're getting bleeped. You shouldn't be consuming that kind of media if those are your beliefs. And so to me, it's just, again, energy being expended that is kind of pointless.
Here, I have two questions for you. One, I would love to see that vote, Callie. I think that would be hysterical
Oh, yeah.
to see how Americans would vote on words. But two, do you think they would lose their impact? If we said we're going to have 10 words that anybody can say and nobody's going to question them,
You have to be
would they
prepared for
lose?
them.
Well, then you just have whatever portion of your population who's angry because these got voted in.
Squeaky
Or
wheel.
do you have that person who's just going to be renegade and say, well, you didn't vote for my words, so I'm still going to use it.
Use it.
I was going to say, I think that for me, the reason that I was talking about putting it to a vote is so that we can apply those ratings almost like, hey, this is where we've decided as a society that our level of appropriateness is, because the majority feels this way, whatever that looks like and is. Okay, fine. But then that's when you start applying it to your ratings and say, hey, this person or this event is R-rated or PG-13 because these are the people and this is what we know. And we've decided that these are the priorities of swear words and what is taboo versus what is appropriate or acceptable. And so then we start, it's just the knowledge of it, right? It's the context. Like, okay, I know that Tim Walz is rated PG. I know that there's going to be some shits and some dams. That just is what it is. And I think that then you go back, like take that to the next step. And especially as a politician, especially as a public figure, you can say, I don't want to be rated that way because I want my message to get out there. I want people to watch me. So I'm going to take this out of my vocabulary for these events because I don't want to be censored. Like, you get to make that choice.
And I think that's how it should be approached. And if you don't want to vote for someone because they use swear words, that is absolutely your right. I don't really agree with it, but I don't have to.
Sure.
And so, like, I don't think it should be this giant scandalous news story. I don't think we need a rating system. I don't think we have to vote on what words we can and can't say. I think you can just vote for the people who do or don't use those words based on better reasons to vote for them than the language. Because here's the thing. If you don't like a politician because they use swear words, don't vote for them. If you really like their policy standpoints, but they use swear words, and that's not okay, vote for someone else.
I think that goes back to what we were talking about way, way, way earlier in this specific episode. We have to vote based on policy, not the person. Just because I don't like Donald Trump talking about grabbing women inappropriately in the locker room that wasn't supposed to be shared does not make him a bad president, does not make him a bad presidential candidate. I may dislike him, but if I agree with the other things that he's fighting for and I agree with the policies that he's looking to implement, then it doesn't matter. It's not that it doesn't matter. It shouldn't be the deciding factor.
Sure, but for some people, it sounds like it would be.
But
that's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly, it can be. And that's exactly what I'm saying. I think we would be wasting so many resources and so much energy, put ratings on everyone that speaks. I mean, you're talking about a social credit score, basically, at this point.
But we kind of were earlier.
There's another option.
Let's hear it.
It's not to swear.
You don't swear.
But
what
here's
does that
the thing.
Fix? Solve, change.
That doesn't solve or change anything. That just puts us where we are right now, which is not allowing people to say those words that most people that I know aren't offended by.
You don't have to have a rating system.
And if I run for office and I drop F-bombs in my political campaign speeches, and that's a problem with you, it's going to resonate with some people, and some people are going to hate it. And the people that hate it, they may not vote for me because of it, but I shouldn't be censoring myself for those people.
I'm just going to tell you this. If you run for office and you use the F word, I'm going to be embarrassed.
Your mama's coming for you.
Yeah.
But as much as I love you, that is on you.
It'll be on you too.
But I'm trying to change the world. People are so concerned with propriety that how much more could we have gotten done if we weren't talking about you shouldn't say these words?
How much more could you have gotten done if you didn't offend all of these people and now they have a chip on their shoulder about you and so they're not going to agree with you, a la Marjorie Taylor Greene? Like, I can't agree with anything that she says because I think that she's an absolute moron based on the shit that comes out of her mouth.
And that doesn't have anything to do with cuss words.
And it doesn't have anything to do with cuss words.
But here's the thing, and this is going back to the discussion I was having with Mom earlier this week, is why are those words, why do those words offend people? Because they were told that they're offensive?
We should do some history on, look up some history on swear words and kind of the origin of them, because I'm really curious, how did it?
I did.
Oh, let's hear it.
We did. We did the F word because we were trying to figure out yeah. So we wanted to know where it came from because we were both guessing that it was Dutch, and it turned out that it was really probably German, but could have some Dutch. But it's a word that's been in use since the 1600s by multiple societies. So Cole has a point. At what point did it become offensive?
And who decided it was offensive and why? Because here's the thing, if you can point to me and say, this is why this word is a bad word and it's offensive, and you can convince me that word shouldn't be used because it truly is vile, then I would rethink the words that I'm using. But I don't think those words are vile. I think they're just words.
What would that argument have to look like?
Yeah.
I can't answer that because I don't know why they're bad words.
So here's the thing, and that is maybe it's contextually that it's a bad word, not that it's a bad word
all the time, every time.
All the time, every time.
So friggin' dang crap and poop should not be allowed on TV either.
stupid.
Yeah, you can't say any of those words. And if that's what then we just shouldn't have TV. No one should be able to talk to each other. Everyone should just go crawl in a hole and do their own thing. So that
Silos
nobody can get offended.
We're going to have a separate podcast over this.
You're looking forward to that one, aren't you, Mom? Let's talk about swear words more.
Okay. Just know, if you run for office and you start using the F word, I'm going to come get you.
Come on.
He's 6'6" and
I
much
love you
bigger than
both.
you. Remember, you're the short one here.
I love you too. I mean,
Yeah, but
just
I'm a mama.
No, you're his mama.
yeah, and
I'm his
Mama,
mama.
I love you, but I would
Yeah.
not base my political campaign on your feelings on it. Would your feelings
getting right now.
be important? Yes. But they would not be the sole driving factor of my
Yeah.
policy positions, because you
I
and
could
I
live with that.
disagree on a lot of things.
Well,
And
that's
you
the
can be
truth.
upset with me, and that's okay.
That's true.
You'll still love me, and I'll still love you. Period.
But that
Yeah,
goes back
it's
to
true.
decency. We have a very specific and a very, I hate to say it like this, a different idea of decency and of love and what that is and how that's determined. Like there is nothing that you and I could do that would make our mom stop loving us. That is based on her and her character and who she is and her convictions and what she believes, which I am so freaking thankful for. But that is not the case for every other child and parent out there.
Yeah, that I was gonna bring up that same caveat, which is really, really unfortunate, but it
Yes.
just is not the case for everyone.
And then you go and so we have to, again, as a society, we have to define what we're willing to accept and what as a whole what we believe, what we predominantly believe more than not, where our commonality is most prevalent.
And I really
and
think
abide by
that
that.
that's what the goal of this podcast kind of is
Yes.
to exemplify that. And
Yes.
so I think that's a really great place to kind of hang up today,
Yeah.
because in this manner, obviously we have different opinions, but you still love me and I still love you. And we can continue to talk about it, and eventually one of us might sway the other, as long as we continue to approach it from a place of love.
Well, obviously we can be swayed because our father, who I'm going to get in big trouble for saying this, like our father has evolved in his words. Cole's celebrating over here in the use of the words that he uses. And I'm
it's
sure that
hilarious.
it is hilarious. I mean, Cole and I like personally took this as wins and celebratory moments. It's like, Dad said this. Yes, we got him. I'm gonna get in so much trouble. I'm sorry, Dad. I love you. I think you're wonderful. I'm not judging you at all.
All right, ladies.
I love you
think
both.
that's kind of our concluding statements there, and I am satisfied with it. I love you both dearly, and it's been an absolute pleasure discussing these topics with y'all.
Amen. Love you
Bye,
guys.
Love you.